Welcome to Watchworthy. It's your co-host, Brother Ash.
And I'm Miss Christy.
And on today's episode, we are going to be discussing the 2024 Amazon Prime docuseries, Evolution of the Black QB.
Yes.
Let's do it. And this is the perfect time for us to cover this. This is the week following the Super Bowl. We just got to see Jalen Hurts face off against Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. And
You mean whoop? They whooped them.
belt to ass. But hey, we're gonna get into that in a little bit more later. Some things you need to know about the documentary. Mike Vick, one of the all-time great quarterbacks of the NFL, not just black quarterback. Mike Vick is known for his amazing athletic ability. He was the narrator, interviewer / host of this documentary. So it was dope to see him touch in with the black quarterbacks from all these different times and different teams in the NFL. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Miss Christy, why don't you pop us off?
So, babe, you know that I have come to learn more about football in dating you and watching it with you.
Yeah, we still got a long way to
And
go.
I was just so blown away by the Black history. It's just like it's crazy that we're everywhere in every industry we touch. You know,
Yeah.
Black people we have Black excellence, right?
Yeah.
But we're not always seen as that. We're often overlooked, and I couldn't even believe that it even happened in a sport that I didn't even know much about. But just goes to show there's racism everywhere. So
Everywhere.
I couldn't believe that the Super Bowl 57 back in 2023, that was the first time that there were two quarterbacks facing each other.
Yeah.
And I feel like
That
like
were black.
exactly, that was the first time there were two black quarterbacks facing off in the Super Bowl. And now in Super Bowl 59 in 2025, this was the rematch of the same two black quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But I feel like every year we get a little bit more and more black quarterbacks, right? And so I think I was asking you at the start of the season, like, wow, why is it so historical to like have black quarterbacks? And I just didn't realize it wasn't a position we often play. Or we do play the position, but in the
Yeah.
NFL, black quarterbacks are often overlooked. So this documentary was all about that. And so I just want to go back to like the 1920s when the NFL was first founded. And this was during legal segregation, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
colored water fountain versus white water fountain. Like I just didn't realize that racism even stretched that far into a sport like football, you know, where two guys are just running into each other. Like, why would you care who's out there running with you? But apparently, it still mattered even then. And so it wasn't, it was like 12 years, they said. It took over a decade for the NFL to start integrating. Red flag.
Yeah, red flag. Red
Just
flag.
Why? Just why?
Because the NFL is.
It's a sport to me. Like,
Yeah, but I feel like out of all of the big sports, I feel like the NFL has been the most problematic when it comes to integration.
mm,
And that could be for a multitude of reasons, but I do feel like, at least in modern sports, it kind of reflects that.
yeah.
When we think of the
Colin
Colin Kaepernick
Kaepernick.
protest, when we think of like in my lifetime, I remember it was maybe 2 to 3 black starting quarterbacks
That's
when I was a
crazy.
kid, and now it has exploded to like at over 10, I
Mhm.
believe, are listed starters for their team. So it's interesting.
It really is. And so, what we learned from the documentary, or at least this was my first time hearing it, the NFL didn't really integrate until they were kind of forced to. Their hands were kind of tied because team they wanted to practice in the LA Coliseum, and it was the venue, the Coliseum itself said, "Y'all cannot practice here with a segregated practice." No.
I think that was the Browns. They said
Yes,
had moved
yes.
to Cali, and that was like
It's crazy. The venue had to tell them like, "No, you're not having segregated practice
and the
here."
Browns are one of those organizations like, oh, this is one of the most historic
Yeah.
organizations in the NFL. Like, but with that history comes
It's a layered
yeah,
legacy. It's definitely not all sunshine and rainbows from the start. And so that team ended up just recruiting a couple black guys from UCLA just so they could say they were integrated. Like, okay, we have two black people now. Can we play here? So red flag because I just feel like I wish there were more people who stood out back then who were like, no, we should integrate earlier on. You know, like it shouldn't have
yeah.
taken that long. But anyways, once they were integrated, the NFL still wasn't letting black players play middle of field positions. So this is something new to me. Like I
Mhm.
don't know the middle field from the wide field or whatever. But but you were explaining to me, babe, how like those middle positions, or they were saying in the documentary how like those are thinking positions. I guess it
Yeah.
takes a little more strategy.
You have to be able to read a defense or offense from these positions, whereas other positions you're more so responding to something athletically, whereas a linebacker or a quarterback has to be able to know what the other side is doing.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
Because when they said that in the documentary, all I heard was racism, racism, red flag.
Truly.
Because they were basically saying, oh, black people can't play quarterback because you can't think. You can't be a leader.
And let me be clear. I never, yeah, you have to be smart to play football. I think people think football is just like a barbaric, gargantuan sport. But you do have to have some form of intelligence, but you don't have to be a genius by any sorts to play football and be good at it.
And nevertheless, it's just that same old sad tale where they think that black people are literally incompetent. Like, they said, oh, a black man can't be a quarterback because he can't be a leader. What? Who told you that lie?
Yeah, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
Because there have been black leaders literally go back through history.
Right.
So
this is only the 1920s we're talking about.
What are you talking about?
And so it really didn't start, they said, until 1953. Willie Thrower, cool name to be a quarterback. Willie Thrower was the first black quarterback in NFL history.
Wow.
But there was a catch, red flag, because he only lasted one game.
Yeah.
They said that he was cut after a week. And so we want to just highlight people like that. I'm so glad that they're documenting it in this documentary film. And Michael Vick is like going, around town and going from state to state, talking to different historical black figures who are still with us. And so I don't think Willie Thrower is still with us, but he was talking to other people about Willie Thrower. So let it be known, he was the first to play, but he was cut. And we'll see a lot of that as the documentary goes on. It's like, oh, we'll give you a chance, but not too much, And so 1968, he's followed up with Marlon Briscoe. Now, you actually, this is the 60s we're talking about now, so that's somebody you might actually have heard of before. You remember, at least our generation. And so Marlon Briscoe, is he still with us?
I don't know.
But still, if he was, he would only be in his 70s or 60s.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because he was the first starting quarterback. So now it's like, okay, he's not the first black quarterback, but he's starting consecutive games.
Yeah.
And so that's who people really consider like he got the first start, if you will. And so he started multiple games as a rookie with the Broncos. And people thought, oh, this is our big chance. This is going to open doors. I feel like we always feel like that. Like, oh, if one person made it on the other side, we're all going to bust through. And it wasn't the case like that at all. Unfortunately, they said that he also only did one season. So, or he was moved to a different position. So, red flag.
Yeah, red flag. But it does take that first person. Like, it got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So we see it more popular now, obviously. But like, had he not, been a trailblazer back in the 60s, it may have taken even longer for the league to change.
Absolutely. But so think about that. They were founded in the 20s, but it wasn't until like the 60s. That's like a 40-year history. It's just like,
that's like multiple generations. It's like 2 generations of football fans.
It's really sad. And so they were talking about how collegiate football, which is where the NFL's recruiting from, obviously, it was all about the Ivies, like Penn and Brown. And so there was a black guy named Fritz Pollard who went to Brown, and he was recruited by the NFL. They said specifically to like raise the reputation, red flag, because this is something we talked about with the NBA too, where like they never thought people would never come to a game if there's black people playing, when it was actually the opposite. They learned if we have black people playing, that's like entertainment and people want to see that, So it's like, yes, they gave him a chance, but it was only because like the optics,
We talked about this when we covered Bill Russell.
Yeah.
I just got to say, like, those people, most of those coaches and, team managers are probably dead now, but I would imagine that they feel like complete jackass.
I hope
because
so.
the black athlete has been one of the most dynamic athletic specimens that this planet has ever seen in every sport. So for you to see that talent and decide, hey, I don't want that talent over here on my team because the color of his skin is just like an idiot to me. And I'm like, you just don't want to win. You want to be right more than you want to win. Because if I'm a coach and I want to win, I want the best talent on the field.
That's so true. And so, speaking of coaches, Tony Dungy, we know him today as like, this historical career, but he had a rough start too as a black quarterback. And I'm so grateful that we still have these historical figures with us alive today to tell their story. He was in the documentary, and he was like, interviewed with Michael Vick at the African American Museum in DC. And he shared firsthand how some black players were told to change their position. Like, yeah, we want you on our team, but not as quarterback. Like, play something else. That is a red flag to me, because that's not what I signed up for. I grew up playing pee-wee quarterback. I want to be quarterback, And at first, I never understood why it was such a big deal. I'm like, oh, shut up, like, you're on the team. But, like, no, if that's your position, that's like asking a first baseman to play third base, Like, I never thought about it that way.
Like, I'm athletic enough to change my positions, but why do I have to is the question.
Exactly.
Like, there are enough wide receivers. Why do you want me to play wide receivers? Because you don't want me to be your quarterback because the quarterback is naturally the leader of the team.
It's just crazy. Like you said, it comes down to the color of your skin because these people like Tony Dungy, their stats will blow you out the water, but because you're black, you can't be the face. I guess it's like I guess the quarterback is kind of like the face of the team, right? Like
Not
they're
even
the
kinda, they are. You feel
yeah,
me? Like yeah, they're almost every team, the quarterback is the captain of the team.
yeah.
So yeah, that's just how football is.
And so Tony Dungy was saying how like either you change your position or you might want to go to Canada to play, which is sad that we got to go all the way to a different country. We've talked about that before with music even. Sometimes America not feeling you, you better take it to Europe. And even basketball players, we know that black basketball players can often get their start in Europe. So it's just sad that we got to run to a different state cuz our own country don't love us. But Dungy did go on to win a Super Bowl as a coach, and then he talked about how he hired Mike Tomlin, who is the head coach of the Steelers, and he's had a successful career. So that really goes to prove during Black History Month, y'all, like we really got to lift as we climb. And I feel like Tony Dungy is one of those people who like brought others along with him. And so he was just talking about how like teams wouldn't outright say that we don't want a black quarterback. That's racist, right? We can't just outright say that. So you know how America is, microaggressions or gaslighting. They'll tell a black quarterback like, "Oh, we really want you, but you need to get your arms stronger," or "You don't fit our style," quote unquote. Red flag.
Yeah, that's a red
So I
flag
had
for
to
me.
ask Brother Ash, like, what does style mean? Is that like culture fit in the workplace?
There's so, like, styles of football, well, offenses can, basically is dependent upon the scheme. Like, in basketball, you have, like, different type of schemes that coaches run, and what was popular back then
The pro style.
was the pro style, offense, and that offense is very, very comprehensive for somebody who knows football. Like, I don't see Tony Dungy not being able to run a pro style offense when he was playing quarterback. Because I seen some of
Mm.
his tape in college, and I'm like, yo, I didn't realize because he is known for being a defensive back in the NFL, but Tony Dungy was nice at quarterback. So for you to be able to say you don't fit that style, I'm like, well, that's your job as a coach. Teach me the scheme, teach me the style. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
that's just
willing,
them
I'm
making
able, you know what I mean?
excuses.
Like,
Make an excuse when you know you're in the wrong, when you don't have another excuse. You know this person is capable, like you said,
yeah,
but it's just to be honest, we can't have a black quarterback. It's crazy. And so, they were just talking about how there are other people: Tony Dungy, Doug Williams, Rodney Peete. Rodney Peete was the 6th round. He was not the sixth pick, the 6th round. He was picked in the 1989 draft, and we're talking about the 80s.
yeah.
Why is it taken? Why is it taken to the 6th round for someone of his talent
He was
to
no
be picked?
slouch. He was no slouch. He led his conference in stats, but
They didn't
yeah,
want to pick a black quarterback in the 1st round.
like there were guys that he faced
Period.
off against in college that were getting drafted before that he
Yeah.
beat in college. Like,
So they were talking about folks like that: Rodney Peete, James Shack Harris, how they really opened the doors for black quarterbacks. And I love how they were interviewed throughout the documentary. Mike Vick, he talked about how someone gets a chance and that changes everything, quote unquote. Because he was talking about for himself. Obviously, we know what happened with Mike Vick's situation. But
yeah,
also just like even we look up to him, right? But then he was talking about, nah, I looked up to these guys and they
yeah,
looked up to these guys. Like it really is just like helping each generation leaving that door, opening that door and then leaving it open behind you. And he was just talking about how like all you need is that one chance.
yeah.
And I feel like a lot of these black quarterbacks, they would not have had the opportunity to shine or be the first if a white coach didn't give them that pass, unfortunately. I hate
Mm,
that. But and Rodney Peete said it's the same thing in football as it is in the rest of white America. As a black person, you gotta be twice as good. He said you gotta be better than the white quarterback.
yeah,
And so it just sucks that that quote, we gotta be twice as good, has trickled down into every industry. Why can't we just be me? Why can't I just play? But you, as the black quarterback, you always got that in the back of your mind, like they don't want me here. Imagine coming in a job knowing they don't want me here. Like that really sucks, and that weighs a lot on the players. And Shaq Harris, he said, he just talked about how like the white coaches would say like we weren't smart enough, we couldn't lead. Again, where is this coming from? This is just racism passed down through generations and generations of thinking.
yeah.
Like you said, this white owner hired his son, who hired his son. We still see that today. The Cowboys, how long has that man been owning the team? And I don't feel it's hard for us to work our way in. That's why I do like to see, like, oh, Jay-Z owns part stock in this team, or J. Cole owns part stock in this team. Serena Williams bought a soccer team, because at least now we're taking ownership as well, because we have learned, like you said, with the NFL especially, it's a business. It's not just sports. So definitely something to think about, how we need black people in leadership roles, not just quarterback, but coaches, owners, staff.
Yeah,
I think I just saw actually the Eagles assistant coach. She was like the first black woman to be at a Super Bowl. It's crazy. Like,
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
2025 and we're still setting these records. And so Shaq Harris, he talked about how he received hate mail as a black quarterback, death threats.
Yeah, red flag. Because
Yeah.
I understand your racial. Well, I don't understand it. I don't respect it or understand it, but I comprehend what the racial climate was at that time. But bro, we talking about sports. Like this
Yeah,
is just sports, and for racism to be that deeply woven into like this country's society is crazy.
it really
That you
is.
found time out of your week after working 40 hours or more at your job to handwrite a letter of hate to a man
Threatening a man's life.
that just goes to work every day. Like,
Yeah.
and to me, I'm just like, why?
I
Like,
can't imagine.
I've never written anybody a hate letter, but it's no different from the people that are on comments
Right.
on
Now
in
it's a lot
social media.
easier
Like,
for
it's
trolls to
yeah,
come for
like,
Jalen Hurts or
and
whatever.
boy, do they come for. I'm a
Yeah.
Giants fan, so like, I naturally most of the time am rooting against Jalen Hurts. But like, as a black man, I do want to see him succeed, and he gets graded at such an unfair scale.
Mm,
And it's like ridiculous. And
yeah.
it's so noticeable that you almost have to address it for what it is. And it's like, yo, come
Right.
on.
I
Like,
don't like to play the race card. I don't. I wish I didn't have to, but 9 times out of 10, it is
y'all
race.
leave me no choice.
Yeah.
Like the guy has literally played at the highest level at every level of his career. And people are still questioning his arm? What?
Man, this man has won no, this is his first Super Bowl.
One, yeah.
He's won a Super Bowl.
Two
Is this going to shut
appearances.
them up now? Please.
It will shut
I really hope it
some
does.
people up, but other people are going to say, you know, oh, it was the offensive scheme. He has great
Oh, here we
receivers,
go.
or that was bad defense that game. Whatever, man. Like,
Well, like that kind of goes to what Shaq Harris said in the docuseries about the pressure that was on black quarterbacks specifically. And he said that he loved the game, but he just felt so much pressure to play perfectly. I'm sure you've had those games where you're like, oh, I can't miss nothing tonight. Like, I got to be on everything tonight.
yeah,
And he said it was like that every night.
it's a different level in the NFL too. Like, it's a lot more money involved, so it's a lot. The expectations are way
Yeah.
higher. Like,
And imagine now you're being black and you got all these white people looking at you, expecting you to perform. And he said that's literally the opposite scenario where you want to be relaxed, not stressed if you're playing a big game. So I can't imagine working under those kind of conditions. And so Shaq Harris was also the first black quarterback to go to the Pro Bowl. Shout out to him. And it was really like Shaq Harris, Walter Payton, Jerry Rice, Michael Strahan, folks like that who went to HBCUs and then went to the NFL. They really shined a light on HBCUs in this docu-series. And so they talked about you can't talk about the evolution of black football without HBCUs.
you can't even talk about the
yes.
NFL, the evolution of the NFL without HBCUs.
Yes.
Because some of the names you listed off of that list, all of them are Hall of Famers, and they've all changed the game in one way, shape, or form.
Yes. So I love how they really highlighted that because, like we said earlier, sometimes you just need to have a chance, and sometimes it's going to be your own people who give you a chance. You might not, HBCUs might not be people's first choice, but they going to always promote black sports. And they allowed the black players to play any position they wanted at HBCUs. So they weren't pigeonholed and they could be quarterbacks and they could prove themselves and kind of get that tape and make those connections. And so shout out to the HBCUs always. And so Doug Williams, he had a coach, Joe Gibbs. He spoke with Mike Vick in the documentary about Doug Williams' career. And they were talking about how in Doug's era, he was the first black quarterback drafted in the first round. It took that long, 1978, to be the first black quarterback drafted in the first round.
Wow.
He was still the 17th pick though. They said they strategically were like, yeah, we can't pick him first. So let's wait till our 17th pick. Because the team that he went to had like the first pick, but they waited till the 17th round. Just disrespectful, I feel. It's just disrespectful. Like you said, if my resume speaks for itself, why am I getting picked last? It's just not fair. It's disrespectful to these players. And so he did ultimately get drafted to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And later, Doug Williams will be the first black quarterback to go to the Super Bowl. He played in Super Bowl 22, and his career was kind of on the line because it came around contract time, and that big question of how much is this black player worth came about. Red flag.
Yeah, red flag, red flag.
Because we personally saw when you don't value a black player, they gonna go somewhere else where they're valued, gonna get the money and get a Super Bowl. So shout out to Saquon Barkley.
Oh man.
And so yeah, they were like on the fence about Doug Williams' career. He's like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I'm leading us to the Super Bowl right now. Y'all still are questioning this? This is crazy."
Yeah.
And it just goes back to like they don't respect us, they don't value us. We're never paid our worth. Still in 2025, finally, I think Patrick Mahomes is the highest paid NFL player, right?
I don't.
He had that big wow contract a few years ago.
Yeah, I don't keep up with like contracts like that. Like I hear the headline, but I can't keep up with like who's the highest. But I know it when it comes to the top 5 contracts in the league, I would say 2 or 3 of those names are probably black men at quarterback, and that's something I'm proud of.
And Doug Williams, he's proud of it too. As a legend in black football, he said, "I like Brady, I like Rodgers, but I have a special interest in the black quarterback."
Yeah, they making dumb, stupid buku money now too. Like,
we're not trying to take away from those guys. Tom Brady, of course, you can be a great quarterback, but being a black quarterback is special because there have not been many of us.
Yeah.
And so when people are like, "Oh, what's the big deal?" Yes, we're gonna make it a big deal. We're gonna make it about race. Doug Williams is like, I was the first, and I'm still amazed to see more coming after me. So I loved how he quoted that, and he was like, listen, not taking anything away from Tom Brady, but I like to see, Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And so Doug Williams, they talked about how now that once you make history, there's no erasing you out of history. We know they try to rewrite the textbooks and all that, and they try to tell us what happened back then. But our legends are still alive with us today, and they can tell us, oh, this is how it really happened. And so they were saying, like, no matter if you made a movie about the NFL or a book, you have to put Doug Williams in it. Black or white, he made history because he was the first black quarterback to start in the Super Bowl and won that Super Bowl and got MVP. So we're talking about 3 different stats being the first.
Yeah.
And that all goes to Doug Williams. So after his era, everything would change. So I'm going to let Brother Ash tell y'all about episode 2 when we get into a little more modern day.
So Doug's era ended, and this is like getting us into the 80s. So the 80s, y'all know, is like an interesting time in America because black people are becoming prominent figures. You got people like Oprah, Eddie Murphy, Whitney Houston becoming like icons in society. But it's also like still not too far removed from Jim Crow and racism being a part of our culture and a part of our society as a whole. So now we're going to talk about a quarterback by the name of Warren Moon. All right, Warren Moon is a Hall of Fame quarterback. He was also featured in the documentary, and he shared how he had committed to Arizona State, but was told that he had to change his position. So he then decommitted and went the junior college route. And I just want to say red flag for him having to ever do that. Because to me, like, it goes back to what I said. Like, you see a fucking Bentley, right? Driving down the street. You don't say, hey, I actually want you to go to the body shop and become a Maserati. No, let the Bentley be